Sit back, relax, and let's have a chapter chat. I'm your host, Jessica Foster. So excited for you to be here today because we have best-selling author Shelley Noble here to talk about her brand new book, The Sisters of Book Row. Hi there, Shelley.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. And I found The Sisters of Book Row just a fascinating read because we're talking book banning, taboo topics, censorship, all things that I feel like readers can relate to today.
Yes, I actually didn't really plan it that way. I was looking for a book. I write historical fiction, so I was looking about for a story, a story about books in Manhattan in the 1900s. And I just sort of fell into this as all these things started happening to us now. Um, So there was this wonderful, wonderful old neighborhood, just this vivacious, really bustling area of Fourth Avenue between Union Square and Astor Place, which was called Book Row. So I thought that'll be a great place to set a story. And suddenly I was in the midst of it. I write generally around the Gilded Age of 1900 to 1915. And so when I started looking for a topic to get me going, I fell right into the book banning of that period. And it was shocking and amazing and repeating now because of the same man that was doing it then. So I was just completely hooked and started doing my research about this situation. And I came up with these three sisters who inherited their father's rare bookstore. And I had read about these three sisters that are contemporaries of us, and the Cohen sisters who had inherited their bookstore, the Argosy, which is a very famous bookstore in Manhattan, from their father. And I thought, gee, I wonder what the Cohen sisters would do if what happened in 1915 happened to them. And after that, I was just back in time. And this is a time when Anthony Comstock, whose name we've all heard now, was sending his thugs around to all bookstores, banning books and doing terrible things. He was the most vicious censor in all of American history. And they know if they're raided, which he did happily, destroying books and paintings and photographs and like even newspapers that were from in a foreign language, since he couldn't read them, figured they must be smut. So they didn't know what to do, and before they can make any decisions, a very debonair gentleman from the continent shows up at their doorstep and purporting to be a buyer for a very private dealer who only wants very rare, very distinctive, unique, old manuscripts. And they go, is this too coincidental? Are we being trapped? Or is this for real and we'll take care of all of our troubles, right? Um, they don't know whether to trust him or not because he could be their way out of being in possession of this manuscript,
Right.
or he could lead them to certain betrayal. And how much really, the question is, how much are they willing to do and risk to save a great work of literature? The Sisters of Book Row.
And I think that when we look at historical fiction, I talk about this a lot on the podcast. It brings to light things in history that maybe have been glanced over in school. We don't really dig into it or hear about it, and it opens our eyes, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, considering the Comstock law, I mean, he was hired by the post office to keep pornography from being sent through the mail. Decent job, right? But he was a fanatic, a zealot. He was a nutcase. And he really, his idea of pornography changed from day to day. It was just ridiculous. And yet, and they made it something called the Comstock Law that was on the federal books. But it's considered a zombie law now. Nobody uses it. It's like, it's okay to be 13 and get married. Nobody uses those laws anymore, but they never bothered to take them off the books. In the meantime, states had adapted them, become zombie laws. And suddenly we see people now going around trying to ban books out of libraries, and you think, where did this come from? And I mean, books have been banned for centuries and centuries and
Right.
centuries because people just are weird. But this is a direct descendant from this. He was hired in 1870. He died the year my book is about.
And as far as the Comstock laws, I was digging into it a little bit after reading your book, and I read something about even medical textbooks weren't allowed to be put in the mail in some instances because of these laws.
Not only that, I mean, he was very against women's health of any kind. But he also had been hired by a group of conservative rich people in Manhattan to head their Society for the Suppression of Vice. Now, Comstock would change from week to week. You never knew if you were going to be pornography that week or not. And he arrested the head of his art school because their catalog had a picture of a naked Greek statue. Like, he would go tear posters for Broadway shows off the telephone poles because they had pictures of the couple dancing. He would grab people off the street who were handing out, say, pamphlets for, vitamins, for prenatal vitamins, and just anything was in. Like when he would go into the tobacconist, right, pull all their foreign speaking newspapers and help themselves to some cigars and a few candy bars along the way, which they did not pay for. It was said that he burned over 15 tons of books, including paintings, great works of literature. The man was just, and it changed. He just got more zealous as time went on. And then they fired him. The post office fired him first. He refused to quit. He just kept doing it. He had his band of merry thugs. And then the suppression of vice people had his replacement, and he still refused to quit. And he made life miserable for him. I mean, he would go to big publishers and round up, boxes of their newly published books that had nothing to do with anything. Just he could do it, so he did.
Wow. And what was the
Yeah.
response when your publisher and your editors were reading your book? What was their response to it? I'm sure that they really enjoyed this just as I have.
Well, I think what they did, they said, wow, this is great. But I think what it really was gulp. Wow, this is great. Because you have to be careful about touching open wounds. I mean, this hasn't healed. We are still happening to us, and it doesn't always. I mean, sure, when it's you don't want children reading, real pornography, but you don't get to take away things just because you personally don't like them. And this is just hit such a nerve by everyone who read it. I mean, they were enthralled because, of course, they're book people. We'll see. But it's a story about more than that. It's
Right.
a story about a way of life, and about how books become a unifying thing, a unifying subject that brings people together and spreads ideas, which might be the problem, but usually good ideas. And it's I didn't. My editor and I were talking one day, and she said, you should write. Why don't you look at something about books? Writing books about books are popular now. I said, okay. And then all of this happened. So I went back to her and said, okay, how about this? And she was like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, it really is fascinating, and I love the story of the sisters too because it has those family relationships in there, so I do think that there are a lot of layers to this book.
Yes. Each sister had their own love within the bookstore, but they also each, like young girls too. I mean, they were young. I mean, for us, I mean, I think the oldest sister's like 26 or 5 or something. I
Right.
mean, but in those days, um, and they had their own dreams like girls do, and and they also had their relationship with all the people who lived at Book Row because it was a real neighborhood. You go to New York now, to Manhattan, you think, wow, big buildings, da, 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 da. But there are these individual neighborhoods, even though most of them are long gone the way they were. There's still remnants that They're just wonderful.
And I love when you go into libraries and they'll have, like, a display and it's, like, banned books, because I look back and some of the books that are on that list were some that I read when I was in school, and I think
Yeah,
back and I'm like,
absolutely.
What in the world was, made that be a banned book?"
Well, there don't seem to be any, like when you drive a car, it's like stop at the stoplight, come to a full stop, put on your blinker, signal before you turn. They were cut in, but banned books, it's like there are no cut and dried rules.
No, no, and I'm like you, there are certain things that there's age appropriate things, but, I mean,
Yeah,
parents can decide that for their
common
children.
sense.
Right, right, exactly, and, I mean, even with my daughter, I'll look at certain books and I'll be like, "Okay, is this an age appropriate book for her?" And make those decisions, and that's okay, but when you just outright ban things without really clear guidelines, I think that's when we run into some
Or even
problems.
knowing what's in them. That's,
Yes.
hearsay. We've heard from somebody that's, you wouldn't see a sign that said road closed and hear from somebody that it's fine to travel and then fall off a cliff. I mean, you should at least look at the book before you have an opinion. My
Right.
opinion. That's my opinion.
Yes, yes. Was there anything during your research that surprised you? I mean, I know a lot probably surprised you, but that
Um,
you were like, "Oh my goodness, I absolutely cannot believe that."
what really was driven home to me is I spend a lot of time walking around the city. I'm a tourist. Well, now I am a tourist because I moved to New Jersey across the bridge, but I'm kind of this out of time tourist because when I look at places, I see like whatever period I'm writing in. And Book Row was so interesting because now Union Square is really the area around it has really been built up, and there are a lot of tall buildings and apartment complexes and neon signs, and it's just so different. But if you walk slowly and get a lot of people mad at you for slowing down the pedestrian traffic, um, you every once in a while see this little building stuck between these two high rises. And I go, I wonder which store that was, because there are pictures from the 30s when a lot of the stores were still there. And I try to think, was this Stafford's store, or was this Kirschbaum's store, or just a, a window that, the glass has probably changed, but it's the same bow window that I've seen in those. And it's always like this, like a diamond, among the sand. It's like always a shock, and it just makes me feel kind of wonderful. But to know that things are still there, I mean, to most people they don't care, but or don't see them, but and then it makes you look at the world in a whole different way. There are special things out there just to be discovered.
Well, and I think when you're a writer, you pick up on some of those details because you have to include that in your writing to draw the reader in. So I feel like
Uh,
we can see the world in a different way.
my settings are never a background because they are what make the people, and the people are what make them. So there's a symbiotic relation there between all parts of the book, people and the things.
And when we talk about going back to censorship, it's always the arts, right? Arts and books that seem to get censored, and those are just an expression of creativity, and a lot of times they can really have a message, about society at the time.
People who look artistically at the world have a sensitivity that doesn't always appeal to other people. Other people like, let's get ahead, let's have better this, do this. And because we see things in a more human, more something sensitive way of looking, I think it frightens some people, it makes some people angry, it appeals to some people, it draws other people in. But the things that are important, like these sisters saving this book, I mean, I would guess a lot of people, first of all, wouldn't know it because they weren't book dealers in rare books. And other people would be, this book is not worth it risking my family, because that's what it's important to them. And somebody else might say, well, I'm selling this. I don't care what happens. Everybody has their own take in life. I think what the arts do, well, maybe this isn't totally true, but what a lot of the arts do, what writing does is they try to speak to everybody and make a place and a home for everybody, even if it's something you don't really agree with or something that's so foreign to you that makes you feel uncomfortable or no. And it's fine not to be interested. Put that book down and look at another one. But I do think we have also a duty to reach out because that's what art is about, is like enriching lives.
Yes, and you're an author, but you also have been a professional dancer and choreographer.
Yes, many years ago.
Yeah, let's talk a little
Yes.
bit about that. I found that so interesting.
Well, my grandmother wouldn't let me take piano lessons when I was a kid because everybody else had refused to practice. So she sent me to ballet school instead, to
Really?
get all those lady things you needed. And I got a job, and I went to the city and I worked professionally with two or three different companies, really, Twyla Tharp and Jose Louis Falco and the American Ballroom Theater. So, I was in costumes and saw the world and worked really hard. And it was wonderful because you got instant feedback. I'm telling you, this is the hardest part of writing. It's like you work hard all day and dancing and you sweat and you have, breakdowns. And you get ready and you put on your makeup and you put on your costume, you warm up and you go out and you dance your heart out. And if, most of the time you get lots of applause and sometimes you get a standing ovation. Then you go to the diner and have dinner and go to bed and start all over the next day. Writing a book, you don't get a lot of applause or standing ovations. It's really solitary. So that was a jar. But I was also raising kids at the same when I started, so I had plenty to do on the outside. Actually just wrote an article about that, and I realized as I wrote it, the art of dance and the art of writing are very often very similar. They're just the vessels are very different, but the message and the means and the sensitivity are the same. They're just one is out there on the stage and one is in there for me and outward later when I'm not around.
When you put your book out there in the world, is it tell me what that feeling is like when you're waiting for that reader feedback. Are you just on pins and needles?
Yes, yes, I'll admit it. A little pins and needles. I've written a lot of books now. I probably have over 30 books out now. It's gotten easier to wait because you're usually working on something else or doing things like this. So you're not quite as aware of the time ticking by the snail's pace. Reviews trickle in, like you get reviews online a lot of times before, like the big book dealers don't put your reviews out until after the book is out. But things trickle out before that. So you kind of have an idea, a little idea, if people are going to like it or not. You don't know what sales are going to be, especially now with AI and all of that, you know. And I'm a big lover of libraries. I say use your library and always be sure to thank the librarians. But a lot of people use the library instead of buying books, which is not great for the people who are trying to sell books.
Right.
The bad reviews stick with you longer still than all the good reviews. And sometimes you have to go back and look at your good reviews. And it's a maybe it's an ego thing, but it's an ego thing in the opposite way. It's to remind yourself that for the one guy who didn't like you, there were 10 or 1,000 people who did. So that's good.
As a journalist, I get that too. And used
Sure.
to yeah, yeah, it's whew, yeah, used to it would really stick with me and it would bother me. And I remember I would, screenshot some of the hateful emails and I would send it to my husband. I'd be like, "Can you believe this?" Now I delete them. I'm like, "You know what? I do not have space for that type of negativity in my
No,
life." And
not
if
yes,
there's
not in your life, not in your work, nowhere.
no. Now, of course, if there's constructive criticism or if someone has a question about something that maybe you could clarify more, you take that into
Yeah.
consideration. But if there is just a hateful comment about your appearance or the way you speak or something like that, that's where I just cannot let that negativity in. And that is a learned skill, though.
Yes, it is, and it's still shocking, after all the books, after all the years, after being on stage, we've gotten boozed on stage, but when people attack you personally or say, "You should never have written a book," well, really, people?
Right, right.
Really, isn't that going a bit far?
Yes.
And to feel like they should tell you and the world about it, I do delete those.
And again, people are entitled to their opinion and all of that, but I think that there's a fine line between opinion and then just being hurtful or hateful.
Yeah, Mean Girls.
Right, right. Yeah, we do not have time for that. But I have really enjoyed reading your book. I found it fascinating and it did make me do research as well because a lot of this was new information to me.
It was new to me. I had no idea when I started what a rich subject matter it was and how the people really spoke to me, the characters. I tried to base on, we don't know a lot about their particular lives, but I tried to base my characters on those characters and how they felt and how they came together as a neighborhood and we also have a recent example of that, of how a neighborhood can come together and protect each other for a good cause, and it worked.
And if you could say there's one thing that you want people to get out of this book, and I know that there's probably many things that you want them to get out of the book, but if there's one underlying thing that you want people to get out of the book, what is it?
Oh, one. I'm a firm believer in we all make history, little though it may be, huge though it may be, but we all make history. And if we work together, we can make a difference in what happens in history. I know that's big, but look at my little Book Row people. They made a difference in history, and we can too.
Right. I think that that is a wonderful message. And are you already working on your next project?
Yes, I am.
Ooh, can you give us a little sneak peek or is it top secret?
No, I don't think it's top secret. Anyway, nobody's told me it's top secret. I'm actually, my one thing they told me, they wanted me to do something earlier. So I thought, okay. And having moved to New Jersey, I thought maybe I should do something about New Jersey. And I was looking around Long Branch. It turns that Long Branch on the shore was the summer capital, beginning with U.S. Grant, the president. And in his presidency, he had a summer home, and several presidents had summer homes. So my new book is taking place in 1870. Whole different wardrobe, whole different, no cars, things much slower getting places. And it's about his White House and what happens to a community. And a young woman who wants to be a lawyer who passed the bar is not allowed to work because she's a woman, and how all of this changed the community for better and for worse. It's early days. I don't know if that's where it's going to end up, but that's in the back of my mind now.
Well, that sounds fascinating as well. But the Sisters of Book Row, that's the one that is out now that people
Out
can
now.
read. Yes. And Shelley, thank you for being here. This was a fascinating read. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I
Thank
think
you.
all of our listeners will enjoy it as well.
I hope so. I enjoyed most of the writing and tore my hair for the rest, so it was really worth it.
Yes. That finished product was all worth it, right?
Yes, love it.
Well, we hope all of our listeners have a great day as well. Thanks for spending part of your time with us.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Chapter Chat. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Happy reading!